found a new recipe. Hopefully anybody who played that game will get that joke. Time to move on to John.
There's cooking in it.
And Randy Orton's fucking up the world, John. What happened?
Randy Orton's tattooed is dividing courts as gamers prepare for upcoming generation. And I can't believe I found this on Yahoo Sports, technically on Twitter, but it was on Yahoo Sports. So essentially what's going on is late last month, this district court judge by the name of Stacey Yandel denied a motion for summary judgment by Take-Two in a copyright infringement case brought by a former tattoo artist, Catherine Alexander. She had done 6 tattoos between 2002 and 2008. They were like tribal marks, Bible verse, doves, rose and skull, like nothing like crazy, right? But unfortunately, Orton has appeared on WWE's 2K series, and they render his tattoos, which they got the rights to for his persona, his likeness. And so, of course, they did it. And she comes back and she wants a piece of the pie because of his tattoos. And in fact, Stacey Yandel wrote that in September 26th, WD would have rejected Orton's video game persona if it appeared without his tattoos or appeared with tattoos that were different than Orton's actual tattoos, which I find is quite a stretch. Because I don't know if they actually said that or if there were some liberties taken with the judgment.
It may have been contractual and they may not be able to talk about it completely.
It also could be them just
that was
kind
the
of
judge.
posting.
That was their finding on it, but
right. But I mean, like that may have been a quote or something listed in the contract that the judge has been privileged enough to be able to read as part of this lawsuit. You know, to say that they had to, you know, like that was part of their agreement.
Well, and it gets a little bit more interesting because there was actually multiple cases involving tattoos within recent times that actually back to back damn near. Take-Two paid a license fee for WWE for what it believed to be the right to invent Orton's avatar. So that is his entirety, like who he is, what he looks like, his personality. And they paid Orton for the right to license his name, image, and likeness. And Catherine Alexander maintains it was unlawful to exclude her from the sequence of payments. And she never licensed a tattoo to be replicated, though I also do not necessarily agree with this in terms of you don't need a license to replicate necessarily. In the world of tattoos, there's no law that says that you have to pay them in order to replicate a tattoo.
Yeah, unless they have some sort of copyright or something tied to it.
Yeah.
Right, and it depends on the agreement, I guess, that's made when the tattoo artist actually prints the tattoo into the person's ink or inks the tattoo into the person's skin in the first place.
And therefore it becomes a part of them. Like,
well,
in my mind,
more or less. I mean, the art piece itself, regardless of what the canvas is, could belong to the original artist as long as there's documentation and a contract signed, whether it be verbal, or actually, I'm sorry, signed loosely of it's either verbal or written to say that, you know, any kind of commercial use of this has to give has to be, you know, inclusive of the artists themselves, you know, in the negotiation. So
yeah, well, in big company style, I thought it was funny that when she went to discuss the sleeve of tattoos with the WWE representative, they laughed at her.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
the rest of it said they offered her. They offered her $450 for the rights.
Yes, and she also declined that $450.
That's a big old slap in the face too, I guess, to any artist for licensure of your artwork after the fact, you know.
Well,
but
we're gonna get through the rest of this first, and then we'll have our discussion. Take-Two contends that Alexander misunderstands the law, and the publisher insists that they license Orton to display her tattoos as a part of his own likeness, and as inked by needle into the dermis layer of Orton's skin, which is altered his pigment, arguably became a part of Orton's body. And under this interpretation, Orton granted WWE the right to license his likeness, tattoos and all. But in a New York federal judge in March, Solid Oak Sketches v 2K Games, Judge Laura Taylor Swain held in favor of Take-Two in an analogous case involving tattoos of LeBron James and other players in NBA 2K. She concluded that tattoos realized that their designs will be publicly displayed, and because of that, she saw differently, and I don't necessarily disagree with that argument, but here's the thing that we come to. Do we agree with one side or the other? And they had, in this article, they had talked to a professor from UNH Franklin Pierce School of Law. And basically what he's saying is, in short, is that basically whatever the normal, like the normalcy of tattoos and what's expected of them should be what's upheld. So if normally you don't replicate tattoos in this industry without either being paid or something, that's what the standard should be.
The normalcy of the industry is what's going to set the precedent for a legal precedent for every bit of artistry or tattoo artistry specifically from now forward, unless another judgment is made further.
Well, and there's some other arguments based on like how much does that actually, how much of it is actually of this product is that tattoo of importance. They tried to come up with a percentage of the actual data, which I think is hilarious. It's like it's only 0.0000431% of the entire data stream. Like it's so minuscule, and I'm like, yeah, well, that's one way to make it look small. But the part that I find interesting is that you can actually get a tattoo, like say you're The Rock. Could you imagine The Rock who's in a movie and his tattoo is being shown because he's shirtless or whatever, and that person goes, "You're going to pay me millions of dollars for that tattoo because you're showing my tattoo without my permission." I'm like, it's on his body. Are you telling me that you're going to control that person's life and what he can and cannot do based on whether you want or will not accept the contract of what they offer you to show that tattato?
Well, and that's kind of what's at stake here, though. I mean,
yeah, it's a big deal.
This court decision could set a precedent that, like, so the funny part to me anyway is that there was already a federal judge that made a decision on this. Like the New York federal judge already said that, and this is a federal judge that made this decision that said that Take-Two could lawfully replicate the player's tattoo in NBA 2K, not WWE. Without paying a tattooist. So
that is like when you're talking about federal judges, there are different circuits. And what happened was in the I think it was the Ninth Circuit in which Illinois resides, there wasn't enough evidence to say that same precedent should be followed. And they say, we don't agree. Or he said that
which is why you would take two of the cases that have a similar circumstance with two different outcomes and make up the ladder, and
which is why it's about to probably end up at the Supreme Court eventually.
Oh, I was going to say, because the next step is the Supreme Court, isn't it? Once you're done with the district courts.
2 steps, I think, between that and the Supreme Court.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not.
Well, you have state Supreme Court, so they would have their own precedent, and then it would go from there.
Well, I think though, once you've hit the federal circuit past the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, from my understanding, comes before a federal circuit judge.
He's talking about like state district kind of. Or are you talking about state circuit courts?
No,
because there are states that have Supreme Courts. Not every state does, but a majority of them do. In which you would go from your local to the state Supreme Court, from there to a federal district judge, and the federal district would then go to.
Right, but I thought the federal district judge. I don't know. I don't know enough about.
Again, we're not lawyers. I don't.
No, but we know how we feel about the subject. So I was going to try to look at this, and holy crap!
Yeah,
they make things complicated for a reason.
There's no simple bar graph. I got a couple thoughts here.
Yeah,
one, we're in 2020, and it's amazing to me. 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, this isn't like something that would be a thing. It's not on this granular level. The tattoo detail, like that's just how far we've progressed with technology. And that to me, as someone who has thoroughly enjoyed video games for a majority, if not my entire lifetime, is something to kind of marvel at, right? Like we've moved far from the pixelated Mario or Mike Tyson Punch Out to where we are today. So that's kind of cool.
Okay.
Hey, you want to add a layer of difficulty? Get a Mario tattoo by the same artist and go in for a video.
Or Triforce, which is common as hell. Hit us up, Mark, before I continue.
So I found the tab. I found a graphic anyway, sort of describing this. Where we're talking about right now is the U.S. District Courts. The next step after that is the U.S. Court of Appeals. If the U.S. Court of Appeals does not make a decision from there, then it is pushed up to the Supreme Court. So the next step after the district court, if these are federal level judges, they're New York. So New York is probably its own district court system, just like Illinois is. If there's an appeal filed there and the appellate judge cannot make a decision from there, then it will move up to the Supreme Court.
And this, folks, is why it's important to vote. I feel like we've been really bad about not talking about those podcasts. Make sure you go out and vote. I voted today.
Go vote.
You're right. If you're above the age of 18.
People, baby.
Look at that. We the people. Anyways, what I find fascinating about this is that this issue hampers media all the time. But video games are super weird in this spot in which, like we've talked about, right? Like movies, like typically they own that product, and that product is the film itself. They don't have to pay royalties for the likeness of Humphrey Bogart, for Brad Pitt, right? He is an actor. He's hired for this thing. It goes forward.
But by the same token, I feel like that's part of their contract.
That is. But video games are different because you can literally create anything. So if you're contractually trying to create someone, Final Fantasy has an issue with this in the prequel to Final Fantasy VII. It was released on PSP. It's called Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. And the main villain of the game had his likeness mapped after a famous Japanese actor / songwriter. They won't re-release that game because it's tied to his rights. They have to repay him for releasing this again, which is, again, not something that happens in any other medium. When you remaster Linkin Park for the 20th year anniversary of Hybrid Theory, you don't repay all the band. The band comes together, works with some company, and that happens. Like, it's just so granular.
It's the publisher who generally works that out anyway. But
yeah. And you know, NCAA had this issue where students were signing up for the NCAA football games, which were happening up until the 2010, 2011, when the court ruled that you can't do that. And the students were getting pissed because they're saying, listen, that's my likeness on a game in which I have no say over otherwise. Right. They're like, well, you signed a contract. So
yeah, that was really screwed up too.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation. However, I do think personally, I look at it in the same way that I would look at the likeness of a character in film, right? If Dave Bautista comes into a film and they choose to show his tattoos because that's on his person, they don't pay the tattoo artist for that. Like, that's Dave Bautista. That's the character he's playing.
But does it?
I don't see
this goes through, would that actually predicate that they would also have to pay those people?
I think it would.
Yeah.
Which to
that's
me, again,
a huge thing, because then at that point, those people have power over these people's livelihoods.
100%.
Because they could offer them tens of millions of dollars, and they're like,
oh, yeah.
No.
I mean, what'll end up happening on the other side of this decision is one way or the other. The way that I see this going is, if it rules in favor of the tattoo artist, is that you'll see a bunch of people with tattoos suddenly going back to their artists with contracts or absolvement agreements, basically, that say you do not claim any ownership rights to this whatsoever. Regardless of what media this ends up in, I have full ownership, commercial or otherwise, of this tattoo or this piece of art.
Again,
because that means you're ruling,
almost makes them equivalent to a slave.
Because and the problem is that until you get an agreement like that signed, I think that's the issue you're going to run into, and then that'll cause a whole other rift of competition we completely allow you to have full commercial or commercial or personal use of this particular product, this art piece now, even though it's attached to your body.
And the thing is, here's what kills me. It's like we're talking about tribal tattoos, a dove, Bible verse. I'm like, this isn't like freaking mind-blowing art we're talking about here.
That's interpretation, artistic beauty out of it, and I don't think that's fair.
No, I agree with that, because you can make simple things look beautiful, and I agree with that. But at the same time, it wasn't like you had created something like a character or a model outside of something that already exists.
In the world of art, that doesn't matter, though. I mean, if you think of clip art, for example,
it just makes it seem cheaper, and honestly, it makes it seem
wall as
gross.
an art gallery is. No, I agree with you. Well, for one, I think you didn't have a contract beforehand, and now you're trying to come and grab money.
Yeah.
That's gross to me. Like, if you truly care about the value of your art, you start working that stuff in, especially when you're like, you've got this guy from the WWE. It's not like you don't know who the fuck he is, right?
Yeah.
Anytime somebody works on The Rock from this point on, they know who he is.
Yeah.
So there's a way to go back and forth. You figure that out between the two parties.
Even
right?
then, the person themselves will probably, if you do good enough work anyway, or you talk to that person, they'll probably be like, yeah, 100%, go check out my tattoo artist if you want to have something done, because like they're the ones who did this and this and this and that, and oh yeah, I'm super proud of my my sleeve and everything, that's other promotion of itself. Now, if you had them sign an agreement at the beginning of it that said that you had ownership rights to this, legally speaking, you have rights to that. You have reasonability of you owned that art, even though it's imprinted on this person's body, unless a judge turns it over otherwise and rules the contract unlawful.
To be fair, what would it take? And here's another thing: if that's also a part of the contract, if you cannot alter the tattoo without permission, it makes you even further indebted into that person for giving you a tattoo. And then 2, how much do you have to change a tattoo before it no longer becomes applied to that contract?
See, and that's where this gets super weird, because for me,
it's going to, because if the precedent goes one way or the other, it's going to have to.
I wonder at what point copyright law gets thrown in here to determine a percentage change before the person no longer owns it.
And they don't have that copyright.
I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if they won't throw the copyright book at this and say, well, look, sure, you can claim a copyright of that piece of art, but if the person changes it beyond, 30%, I think, difference, or 15% difference between items or between copyrighted elements, like that, like once you cross that threshold, then it no longer belongs to you, regardless of the fact that you're the one who laid the ink in the first place.
And also comes to the fact of like, if you do that, would also support, if you get a Mario tattoo, you have to change it by 30% in order for it not to be a copyright infringement and you not also be applied to that.
So that actually stands because Mario is a character that is owned by Nintendo, just like the Triforce and all that. That's different. We've already seen like companies actually sue individuals. They do own triangles, yes.
We've already seen companies sue individuals because they've had
Disney suing that
logos tattooed or whatever on their stuff.
That fucking child care center because they painted.
It's so gross. It's like, are you serious? Right? I mean, granted, now if that daycare center comes down, it's like they're beating children, and they're like, check it out, they got Disney characters right up front. I can see why that could be.
Turns out they were indeed beating. No, they weren't beating.
Oh, Jesus! I was like, I can see why they're mad.
But I think about this in the like they're framing it in the sense of like, this is art, right? So when you take a picture of a painting, if I take a picture of the Mona Lisa is too old now, right? But let's do Andy Warhol, right? I can go to a museum and take a picture of Andy Warhol stuff and put it up on social media, and they don't fucking own that because they purchased Andy Warhol's painting. The museum did. They're the ones holding on to it. They paid the artist or his estate, and therefore, whenever I post that up, they have the right to come after me and say, hey, we own the rights to this, so we're going to come down on it because they're that owner, right? In this instance, that would be the person's body. As the person's body, they can go around and say, hey, WWE, I'm not comfortable with you showing my tattoos, but I don't see in any way how the artist is because they've sold their work. Again, you're not contractually obligated. There's nothing as far as we know. And the service, like the entirety of it. So, I don't want to sound crass against artists because I definitely want there to be more flexibility in this, but
this is why I feel like you're do this, because you want to pay artists and you're super hardcore about this, and I'm like, how are you going to say and how are you going to justify that this is fucked?
But you're also infringing on another individual from them creating their own art.
Cool. Right. Like, then make a contract that this is mine and no one else's.
Exactly. That's my point.
Well, and part of it is who first off declaring who actually owns the art at that point. It's physically on someone's body, but it also is done by someone else. So once that judgment I think is made in the first place, which based on industry norms of the tattoo industry, I imagine there's a ton of tattoo artists out there looking at it like you're just going for a money grab on this. You're really just trying to pull at strings because you realize that suddenly your art is showing up somewhere else because somebody paid you for a service.
Yeah.
And now you're not happy about it because suddenly they're making a ton of money off of it. But that's not, that doesn't mean
They're
anything.
saying it's a part of their personality, which is what they are selling. And I'm like, no, I mean, you didn't create his personality with a tattoo.
Still, right.
Yeah,
he's the one that told you what he fucking wanted in the first place. You didn't make it and say, this is going to make you a WWE wrestler.
You could argue you've enhanced that personality, but even still, you signed, like, you had your business transaction, which is he came to you and said, I want X tattoo. You said, sure. Contract was signed by basically sliding that fucking credit card. So unless you have other paperwork stating, well, I talked to him about it, and when he appears in some other format, I get, like, how is this any different than him appearing in WWE?
Yeah, that's my point. So, why hasn't he been sued up until that point?
Like why isn't a lawsuit been present up to this point? Because it's appeared in television now. So
and I have a feeling it's because it is specifically film or pictures. I think there are protections for that because. I mean, again,
the digital medium is a weird space.
I don't think that there's necessarily protections for that. I mean, there might be contractual protections, but I don't really think there's protections for that. I think it's because video games are ruled as a different form of artistic, like it's a recreational, or the artistic style of the tattoo had to be recreated specifically, and that is what they're talking about, is that you recreated my art of that person's body, or that I put on this person's body by rebuilding this person's body in another form of art.
See, I think that's what John means, though. Yeah, well, exactly. And I think the key here is there's not protections in the straight sense of the law, right? That's why we're sitting here talking about it, because there's not. Right. It's protections in the assumptions of the medium. The assumptions right now is that we treat it like film, and that's what everyone's been doing. This artist is challenging that. We will get a definition by the end of this.
Gross that you can't get a tattoo without someone saying you can or cannot do something with my body. Which, by the way, being a female, I know that you don't like that when other senators do that. So why are you going to do it to someone else? Just putting that out there.
The only reason I guess I mentioned,
you have morals, you don't.
The only reason I mentioned, I guess, the difference between film or television and game development here specifically is just a paragraph anyway in the Yahoo Sports article where it says Orton has appeared as a playable character in the WWE 2K series. To render the 9-time WWE champion, Take-Two digitally recreated an in-game reproduction that maximized realism, including with respect to Orton's tattoos. I'm curious if they're not stating, because games are considered generally a form of art. No different, to be fair, than film or television.
Media, we can lump it under media, right?
But I think the grab here is that the recreation of the art had to be done, not necessarily the fact that it was used in Orton's likeness specifically.
Well, and that's where I'm saying the assumptions are what are the protections, right? Like the assumption right now is that you treat it like a film in which, hey, he's being filmed. That's technically digital recreation.
But it's not like somebody actually sat there and designed out the art again in
Depends on the film and what you're trying to do, because sometimes they have to
for CG purposes, maybe. Yeah. But so, WWE doesn't work that way. As far as
but I mean, like Dave Bautista worked for WWE and also filmed, like shot a bunch of films. Same with The Rock, right? Yeah. Like they have their own contracts with WWE, but they also are their own individuals. Like John is saying, they have art and jobs and other things they do outside of their contractual agreement to WWE. So in those instances, it's just super specific that they're targeting this individual. And granted, maybe it's because Randy Orton's not in a whole lot of films, right? As far as I know, he's like been in one or two, but mostly in WWE. So the only argument is the video game medium over something that would CGI create.
Realistically, like the Orton has barely anything to do with this lawsuit in the first place. He's not the one targeted by it. He's merely a bystander that happens to be the canvas in this.
He's not a bystander when he gave away rights to something that the court decides that he no longer had the rights to. And it's a scary precedent to say that you no longer have the rights to your own likeness.
So that would be a follow-up lawsuit. That would be a follow-up lawsuit depending on the decision. I mean, if the decision's made, sure, that the original tattoo artist does own it, which again, in what seems to be a collective opinion of the three of us, no, she doesn't own the rights to that. It belongs to somebody else. That's an industry standard kind of. Actually, I don't know if either of you have tattoos. Do you?
No,
not ones I'm willing to show.
Interesting. I have one here on my chest, and there was nothing that I signed that said that my artist owns any rights to what's printed on my body. There's nothing that says, to be fair, that I own all the rights to the art that's printed on my body. However, the assumption is that if I go on camera, if I have myself reproduced in a video game, that I'm not going to have this sort of thing done before or done back to me, like it. And if you want to lump, video games and television and movies together in a form of media, and again, this is up to the judge to make that decision, then yes, 100% the precedent and the industry standard of this over time has been, no, this is generally allowed. The person who has the tattoo owns the art. I also just find it interesting that the Illinois judge would not automatically go based off of the precedent set from the New York judge on the NBA 2K case. So
Illinois.
with also Take-Two. Yeah. I'm surprised that their lawyers have probably hammered on this pretty hard of look, we already have a precedent set with the New York district judge. Why is this even an issue now? So I don't know. I'm interested to see, I guess, what kind of decisions made here, because there's going to be an entire industry shift after this.
Well, with two federal judges making different opinions, even with an appeal, I don't see a way in which it doesn't still go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It depends. Again, if the appellate judge also upholds whatever decisions made here, assuming there is an appeal in the first place. But if the appellate judge upholds this decision, short of them reversing it anyway, then it won't go to the Supreme Court. So
I can tell you right now, if the Illinois judge upholds what he's talking about, UK is going to appeal. Hands down. They're not going to sit there and
let it. It's just such a dangerous precedent. And I'm not okay with it at all. The fact that someone could literally decide whether you can and cannot do something based on a tattoo just infuriates me.
It's just such a strange thing, because again, you want to attribute yourself as an artist, and I think about traditional art,
and they got paid for their art.
Well, exactly, right? Again, if I go and commission a painting, some random local artist, and I have that painting, I can put that painting on this podcast every fucking week for the rest of time.
You mean the ones right behind you?
Well, those aren't.
Unless part of the agreement that you sign whenever it's commissioned is that they own commission or commercial rights to it.
The key is what happens at the time of it, right? And so if I go and they say, "Hey, here's a painting. You gave me money. We're good." Then I could put a YouTube live stream till the earth explodes on that painting, and they can't do shit about it, even if it gets so millions of views and I get a bunch of advertising dollars off of it. They literally have no control over that.
Yep.
That's just how
the only reason you're famous
works.
is because of that shirt you're wearing, Brent. Okay.
I know. It's because I look just like a new recipe. But it's that's with that kind of logic, it just boggles my mind. It's you didn't sign any special agreement. I would assume at this point in time we're going to court for two separate instances. Now I know the NBA is different than the WWE, but at this point in time, there's no way 2K is not coming out and being but or the woman at least, right? Hey, I've got a contract.
It's the same company though. It's Take-Two Interactive in both cases.
Yeah.
Take-Two won in one case with a federal district judge and is apparently in the gray area suddenly with a different one. So John, I agree that first off, if Take-Two loses this, it's going to go to an appeal. And something tells me that an appellate judge in that scenario is probably going to go, not my problem. I'm going to send this up to the Supreme Court. Yeah, I don't want to deal with this kind of decision, because realistically, it's already been made in one decision. Now suddenly there's a secondary decision that's in this favor. So we're going to let currently 8, maybe 9 people figure this out, on themselves. So
this is why I couldn't be an appellate judge, because I would look and go, "You fucking dumb, go that way." But
you already had a decision made on this. The fuck are you talking about? Get out of my courtroom.
Pour my scotch and be like, Case dismissed. We have talked about this way longer than expected, so please let us know
We did.
what your thoughts are on Randy Orton's tattoos. Not about the case, not about any of that. I just want you to know, like, what did you like them? You think they're a little basic? John seems to think they're a little basic.
I think they're basic as hell. I mean,
You
the
can
designs
put those
themselves look fun.
I
Are
mean,
they
I think-
basic
comments-
ideas?
I think the way the mix mash looks on his arm anyway in the sleeve, I think that looks good.
The comments are floating directly above John's Clover hat. Now it's time to move on to the final topic of the show, which is